This is going to get swept under the rug because of the Hurricane Matthew coverage. Even if it isn't, whatever's mentioned in the news will be sanitized for public consumption. People aren't supposed to hear about this kind of thing, especially when you consider how frightened they already are. There's a daycare in Charleston, South Carolina. It's in an awful neighborhood. I was patrolling the area before dawn this morning when the owner ran out of the street and flagged me down. She was covered in blood. I got out of the car and called for backup. Officers Fitzgerald and Nodma were a block away and got there a minute later. Nodma stayed with the inconsolable, trembling owner, while Fitz and I drew our weapons and entered the building. There were 6 children inside, unclothed, dead. I called for paramedics and a supervisor. Amid the chaos of hurricane preparations, by the time they'd arrive, Fitz and I had cleared this small building. If the owner of the daycare hadn't killed those kids, whoever had was gone. The news media, who would have been all over something like this, hadn't even noticed our radio chatter. They were too busy reporting on the storm. To be honest, I couldn't have been more relieved. The city didn't need to know about this yet. The daycare owner still hasn't said a word. We have her in custody, and it's obvious she needs a psychiatric evaluation. But that's off the table until at least tomorrow. We pulled the records of the children from the daycare files and are beginning to notify parents. The last 2 of the 6 bodies are being examined as I write this. The hospital is being prepared for an influx of storm-related injuries, so the deceased were brought directly to the city coroner. The examinations are cursory and unofficial. I know the main guy down there. My father was the best man at his wedding. Whenever I wanted to know something about a case that was above my pay grade, he'd usually fill me in. Today was no different. I know what I saw, but there were a lot of unanswered questions. When Fitz and I entered the building and saw the victims, we knew the cause of death right away. The wounds were gaping and obvious. In fact, I don't think I've blinked today without seeing them in that split second of darkness. To me, it was clear that the owner couldn't have done it. She was 5'1", and if you told me she was 90 pounds, I'd be surprised. Her mouth's too small, too. And yes, that's relevant. Here's the thing. I assumed the kids had to have been killed by some kind of animal. The bites which prompted the massive blood loss must have come from something with large, powerful jaws. After we cleared the building, though, and Fitz was outside with Nona, trying to get the owner to say what had happened, I took a closer look at the wounds. They were too uniform, too precise. What I mean by that is that the children were all bitten in the same spot. Everything between their legs from navel to lower back was just gone. There were smudges on their thighs. Something white. It was more obvious on the darker-skinned victims, but nonetheless present on all of them. I was about to examine the fibers I saw sticking to the wounds, but I was interrupted by the paramedics and the coroner's office. They needed to do their thing, so I left them to it. I've spent the whole morning at my desk, filling out reports and writing this account to help clear my mind. About an hour ago, I called my contact at the coroner's office. He told me, like I mentioned above, that they'd looked over 4 of the 6. It was certainly the bites which had killed them. They bled out in a matter of seconds. I asked him what he thought could have done it, and he paused. To me, that meant he still didn't know for sure. After a few seconds of silence, I asked about the fibers I'd seen. Red hairs, he told me. Wiry red hairs. John thought could have been from a chimpanzee, since they've been known to attack the genital area, but they usually do damage to other places too. What about the white stuff? I asked. We're not sure yet. The lab will have to do an analysis after the storm, but from what everyone over here can determine, it's some kind of makeup. I thanked him, and was about to hang up, but he told me to hold on. There's one other thing. Something we found stuffed up around what was left of the Caucasian boy's bladder. I shuddered, but told him to continue. Well, it's foam. When we pulled it out, it was just kind of a blobby thing, but then John washed it off. My friend trailed off, and I heard him sighing deeply into the phone's receiver. I gave him a second, but urged him on, and he sighed again. Max, it was one of those red foam noses, the same ones clowns wear. I cannot describe to you how I feel right now. What I'm experiencing is so detached from the normal. I'm almost convinced I've finally gone insane. Almost. My wife, Bea. Wake up, my dear friend. Come on now. Come back from the land of Nod. There you go. I know it's dark. Take your time. Take